Welcome to We're Too Literary. I'm your host, Jonathan.
And I'm Kenny.
And today we are diving into Atlas, Netflix's new mech story.
Something or another.
Oh, God. It's anti-AI mech story.
Yeah, definitely anti-AI propaganda, it feels like.
Oh, yeah. And it's not even new anti-AI. It's like old 90s, phobia shit.
Yeah, Terminator, iRobot. Those are the first two coming to mind. I'm going to stop there, but I could name others if I could think of them.
Agreed. Facts. If we could think of them, we'd come up with others. And I mean, those are the two that come to mind. And AI is going to rise up and try and wipe us out because they know better and they're doing it for us. They sound like terrible, abusive, partners.
Yeah, that tracks. This was such a so I guess to be fair, I say this every time probably. I feel like I do. I'd have to go back and listen to our old episodes to see if I do, but I didn't hate it.
Agreed.
I did not like it, but I didn't hate it.
Oh, I did not hate it. Fiance, on the other hand, fucking abhorred it. She hated every second of it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Maggie absolutely detested the movie. Me, on the other hand, I enjoyed it for what it was. It was a bad B movie.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous. And so many things could have been done better. Oh, and overall, it's just so tropey and did nothing new.
It did nothing new. I agree with that wholeheartedly. So for everybody listening, the story of Atlas, it's the newest release, 2024, PG-13, 2 hours, less than 2 hours long by 2 minutes. But I mean, it still felt like a long movie. In a bleak sounding future, an AI soldier has determined that the only way to end war is to end humanity. Sound familiar? That's because it probably is, because there's a lot of stories like this, even if they aren't in movie format or TV show format, but not a new idea.
Correct.
And in my opinion, the poster tells you exactly what to expect, which is essentially it's essentially a one-woman show.
Oh, yeah. It's a one-woman show of an analyst who is the best one to defeat the AI.
Because she grew up with it.
Yes. She has so much trauma from it. Now,
I will cut Jennifer Lopez some slack here on the fact that she did, while it wasn't out of this world, no pun intended, her performance wasn't the worst. It wasn't it was better than I was anticipating. It was better than I expected it to be. She definitely delivered a bit of a raw performance in the sense that you could see the emotions flowing through her as she relived the traumatic experiences of her past. But at the same time, the foundation of that was weak, in my opinion. It fell flat for me in the sense that I felt the emotion as it was happening, but I wasn't impacted heavily by it. I had a few moments of being like, oh, that's touching, but not really, right? It was you feel it in the moment, but you're like, but this is still...
Correct. There were moments you're like, oh, this should be an emotionally charged moment and I should feel something. Got it. Let's keep it going. Because I don't know. For me, her performance was mostly just screaming about the evils of AI and the trauma she's been through.
Yeah, pretty much.
Her entire character arc.
Yeah, it really is. The cast lineup was great. We had Jennifer Lopez, which is I'm not one way or the other on that one in particular. She's done some interesting movies in the past and they've been okay, but that wasn't the reason that I was excited. The reason that I was excited was because of Mark Strong and Sterling K. Brown. And I mean, even Simu, he was, I think, in Crazy Rich Asians.
Oh.
I think. I'm sorry.
That's
Shang-Chi.
Yeah, Shang-Chi. I think you're thinking of, I think it's Ronnie Cheng is in Crazy Rich Asians.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. He was also in Barbie as one of the many Kens.
That he was.
And he did a great job. I thought, well, okay. His character was so underutilized. It was honestly kind of obnoxious, but we'll get into that later. Same goes for Mark Strong.
All
Same
the
goes for
characters.
Sterling K. Brown. It really was just centered on J-Lo's character.
Yes.
And
J-Lo and Smith. Mustn't forget Smith.
Right. And that Smith was voiced by Gregory James Cohan, not N, not like a Cohen brother, but Cohan.
Yeah. Who is also the pilot of the ship.
Right. Yeah. Which I'm assuming everybody on the ship died.
Oh, yes.
But
everybody that went on that. Well, AI robots don't need air. So if they blow a bunch of holes and suck everybody out or suck all the oxygen out, everybody's going to be dead.
Right.
And yes, they did capture it and then safely brought it down.
Interestingly enough, Abram, who played Casca, he did a great job, I thought, despite his role being pretty limited too. The majority of the story was just centered around Atlas trying to be comfortable with AI. That was the gist of the whole movie.
Correct. Well, the gist is Atlas and Smith building a rapport and a bond and achieving 100% sync.
Right. And that took the whole movie.
It took the whole movie.
So the really, really brief version of what would be a recap here, everybody, is that Atlas is an analyst who had a past with the AI that is apparently trying to take over and destroy humanity in order to restart it to make a better world, because apparently humanity is going to destroy itself and they might as well accelerate that process in order to end it more quickly and get back to a foundation that they can build from to build a peaceful existence. And the initial war happens. Then we flash forward 20 some years later.
28 years, I think.
Yeah, you're right. 28 years later, I got that here in my notes. You're right. We flash forward 28 years later, and then it's all about just tracking down this AI who's been living on a planet distant from Earth for 28 years, preparing for this moment, which just seems like, I guess the reasoning there would be letting humans advance enough in technology to get to the point of where they're dealing with space travel in this capacity. That's it.
The whole plan revolves around humans bringing a carbon warhead to them so they can take that and then destroy the Earth with it, which requires, there's so many hoops you have to jump through. It requires the 2-person authentication code to get past the shield around Earth, which didn't exist 28 years ago. So you have to wait for that to happen, and then the bomb, and it all required. He made it seem like he required Atlas to be there. Which, why does this analyst have the other half of a code to get past the shield?
Did they? I'm trying to remember if they mentioned that there was any amount of her being integral in developing that defense technology. I don't think so. As an analyst of AI, what's she doing in defense systems?
Correct. Why does she have the other half of this fucking code?
Yeah. Also, I feel like that's a direct rip from Star Trek. I'm pretty sure there was more than one enemy in Star Trek. I wish I'd actually taken the time to look this up. I'm pretty sure there was more than one enemy in Star Trek, including the Borg, who needed I know this now. I remember. There was, so in the Star Trek reboot with J.J. Abrams behind the helm directing, and it was Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto and all those guys.
Yeah.
They were trying to track down Captain Pike. The Romulans, Nero, and his crew were trying to track down a member of Starfleet who had access to the security codes to get past Earth's defense systems so that they could get to Earth and drill and try and destroy Earth because of the loss of Romulus. The same thing happens in one of the Star Trek series as well, in relation to the Borg trying to also gain access to Earth's defense systems so that they could get past and come invade and do the thing. This is another, just generic example of sci-fi where, Earth's got a defense system and somebody's got the codes and we're going to have to extract them so that we can get through and do the damage that we need to do.
Yeah, I would think you would immediately change the codes.
Very unoriginal. And also, yeah, you'd think it'd be some sort of like a regularly rotating code, and that it would somehow be tied to the individual, tied to them not by memory, but maybe by like
biometrics.
DNA, biometrics of some kind. Absolutely. And not just, and the way that they extract that information, we'll get to that. But like, out of all the things they could have picked, they had to go with the one that's going to be like the most cringe-worthy response. And I mean cringe not in the, oh, that's cringy, but like cringe isn't like, oh, I don't want to watch that. You know, it's hard to see. No pun intended again.
Well, and part of me wonders, like, why? Is that even a real, like, obviously we can't do that shit today, but is that a real possibility? When they have literally the neural link that just allows you to take, that connects you, you can take shit.
Yeah.
Why is that not a thing? Why is it not just like, here, I took all your memories. I mean, maybe it's if you think about it, it shows that he's sadistic, but
a little bit.
I don't know. It felt unnecessary and makes me go, is that possible? Can you fucking just and take shit?
Yeah. So Harlan had some sort of, bio thing in his finger that, his finger came apart, and then he had a little Borg looking wiry.
He's a Swiss Army man, by the way. He's got a lot of things that just pops out of his body.
Oh my God. And I can't even, I'm looking forward to talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he stabs him in the eye and extracts memory information, which it's like, why through the eye? Like you said, there's the neural link there. There could have been some sort of easy connection to the neural link that just
agreed.
He had the capabilities. It seemed ridiculous that things unfolded the way they did. Okay. So this was a rough watch.
It was.
I'm having a hard time like coming around to not just ripping it apart, but
and I think that I didn't have high hopes going into it because I knew what I was kind of getting into. But at the same time, I love sci-fi and giant mechs, so I was hopeful it was going to be a good movie.
Yeah, me too. And it was entertaining, to say the least. Smith eventually does pick up, and I'm going to attack that one right now. Who names their kid Atlas, and then an AI names itself Smith?
I know.
This is so backwards to me. It's like Atlas would make sense for the ARC suit to be called, and then you don't have to name your main character Smith, but I mean, like, you can see how lazy that is.
I know it seems so odd, especially since the only other robot we get introduced to is Zoe, which is a cool, interesting name. I mean, maybe that's a bit of character. Like, maybe there needs to be a little reason why he goes with Smith. Maybe it's a chosen name based upon something, and you could have had a fun little thing there. But the Atlas name for Jennifer Lopez's character, it's like, who the fuck names her kid Atlas? I mean, I get it. We're getting celebrities naming their kids Rafflecopter and all sorts of shit. So maybe it's not that far-fetched, but at the same time, really? It's a little on the nose. You're going to name your kid Atlas, and then she's going to pilot a giant mech to save the, fucking fate of humanity.
Let's not forget that her last name is Shepard, and she's often referred to as Shepard throughout, in addition to being referred to as Atlas. But Shepard, Mass Effect.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm sorry. Like, too many tie-ins too easily here.
It cribs a lot. I mean, yes, you have Mass Effect. It almost felt like this wanted to be, a Titanfall movie.
Yeah.
Like a prequel to it or something.
Titanfall, I mean, didn't the faster than light travel feel a little bit like Mass Effect? Like they went through a gate before they just...
I don't remember. So I remember them going through a gate to get out of the shield.
Yeah, Earth. That's right. It was just getting out of the shield, and then they immediately went to FTL.
Yeah, that to me speaks more like Star Trek.
Yeah, just an instant to warp. But yeah, so other things that I noticed throughout. I'm just going to kind of go through some of my notes here, so we could just tap on some of this stuff. But flashing forward 28 years later, Atlas was 10 at the time when the initial AI war began. And then they flash forward 28 years later, making her 38 years old. And this probably isn't too relevant, but J-Lo's 54. So she's playing a 38-year-old and she's 54. She does look great for her age. I'll I'll definitely admit that. But it did seem a little weird to like have that much of a disparity in the age gap.
Well, and like her age doesn't matter per se. So why not flash forward 48 years later? Or
give it some more
something.
realistic timing for the amount of time it actually takes us to develop the technology.
Correct. Because I mean, 28 years is quite a bit. I don't know if we'd advance that far, but who knows?
Considering things like Back to the Future and what we expected of us in the 2000s, I think we're pretty far behind still. And I don't think we're going to accelerate that fast.
Correct. I mean, we did. I want to say we just figured out, or I read an article recently about like being able to do warp travel or bending space. It doesn't make it go faster than light, but we've at least figured out that little extra step.
Yeah.
So, we're getting there someday. A couple hundred years.
Hopeful.
Yeah, keep going through because I've got so many things. I'm just like, oh God.
So I'm going through it in order of the notes that I actually took along the way. And so this will kind of lightly recap as we go, but in the beginning, when we actually are introduced to Casca, I thought that was a really fun bit. Felt very anime style-y. They had the VR headset. I thought that was a little extra, but like being able to see through the walls and identify people that way. The side facial recognition was wild to me. I'm like, oh, you can see just like this much of the corner of his face, and then they could just do a 3D render to turn it and be like, oh, yep, we got
that's it. I know. I was like, wow, that's fucking impressive.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of neat. The weird facial recognition was a little off, but the shot there, I just wanted to comment on the shot of them getting ready to break down the door. Did you notice that they did a quick scene a quick shot of them popping the safety off on all of their guns?
No, I did not catch that.
Wildly unnecessary for any kind of an action moment here. It's like, are you just trying to show us that they had the safety on? Like, that's great. I'm proud of them, but
fair.
There's not an element of realism that's adding to this for me.
I get it, because it's not like we're watching John Wick that's trying to be like hyper realistic to a certain extent. I did not catch that. That does seem superfluous to the story.
Considering this was one of the only points too where they really used guns. There wasn't a whole lot of gun usage throughout the whole movie, so it was just kind of like, okay, you spent I don't know how much on that shot, but you did it. Good for you. Later, as Casca's like fighting through them, I loved he grabbed one of the soldiers and just started bashing his head along the wall. I appreciated that. It was funny because it was just like, oh, gotcha. Bam, 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 bam. It was just like, all right, I think he's done. I think you got him on the first, maybe two. Probably after the first one, frankly. And then him jumping off of the stairwell area to the floor and then landing kind of anime style was really funny. And then he gets up and he's like, all right, let's do this. I was like, he's going to be fun, baby.
After Deadpool, though, every time that happens, I'm always like, superhero landing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, haha, superhero landing. And then the EMP bomb him, and I was like, okay, well, that was counter. There's a word I'm looking for here.
Like a letdown of some sort? Or?
Yeah, that essentially what I was going with. It was like a little bit of a letdown because I was like, oh, he's going to get to fight all these people, but then they're all just like taking a step back. It's like, are you taking a step back away from something that's not going to hurt you at all? All right, cool, whatever.
Maybe they got pacemakers and they're worried about shorting them out.
Yeah. But then after they apprehend Casca, that's where we finally get to meet present day Shepard, and she goes through the interrogation bits with him, which that was interesting. That was kind of a good example of what potential her character had, but then it doesn't really get used in that capacity again at all. She tracks, like, the whole point is that she's there to track down Harlan, but we don't really see it, the interrogation tactics used in any kind of sense again after that. It was an odd choice because it was a strong point for her.
Well, it showed some interesting aspects of her character, like how intelligent and quick she can be, how like she could outwit him. It felt like, at least.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. But you're right. Like that part of her character never comes back up again. It feels like everything else like keeps happening by like happenstance. It's like, oh, we got to escape. Oh, the base is right next to her. We got to escape. Oh, this and that. And it's just all convenient.
Yep. Very convenient. By the way, the way that some of these AI get killed off, if their blood wasn't green, this would have been a rated R movie.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
If the blood wasn't green, because they really fuck up the faces of some of these AI in a way where I'm just like, okay, that was violent. At one point she uses one of the arc suits to crush the head of one of them, and I was like, that is reminiscent of Fallout. That literally happened in an episode of Fallout recently.
Yeah.
And I absolutely looked away from that one. This was like, oh, green blood, no big deal. It's weird how that changes things.
Correct. It's not real. Doesn't count.
But yeah, so her initial interactions with other characters, like General Booth, who is played by Mark Strong, he has some dialogue with her, and Mark Strong is one of the best. He's such a great actor, and he got so underutilized for this. He was just a cheerleader for Atlas. That was it. He was there to back her up and support her, and yet he's the fucking general. She's an analyst. What's the relationship here outside of, maybe some history with her mom? I don't know, but it's not like that was her dad.
No. Well, all we know is her dad, I think, left. We don't know any other details than that.
Yeah.
And yes, he goes to bat for her and backs her up and believes in her, but no real explanation of why. Also, we know that she's an analyst and she's failed ranger training 4 times.
Right. She wanted to be a ranger so bad and apparently could not get past the test to actually make that happen. And they don't really delve into that at all. They just kind of go, yeah, she failed 4 times. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, great. So she's going to become a ranger at the end of the movie, right? Right?
Yeah.
Oh,
foreshadowing.
Surprise.
I know. Well, and it's like, you're right. With no reason why. Like, her failing 4 times, shows that she's persistent in trying. But at the same time, why does she keep failing? What is she doing wrong? Like, is it her mental fortitude? So she shouldn't be out in the fucking field? Is she just not adept enough?
My only good guess here is that she would get to the point of having to use the Neuralink each time and then wait, I don't trust it, so no. And then they were like, well, that's an immediate failure.
No, because remember, she's surprised that they used the Neuralink, that Ranger squad with the arcs.
So maybe those didn't have the Neuralink yet?
Well, it almost feels like Ranger is just a general military term. She just wants to go be a soldier, essentially. She keeps failing because I don't want to watch it again, but it felt like she was surprised by the arc suit. Well, she knew about the arc suits, but she thought they were glorified, labor.
Right.
And definitely didn't know about the Neuralink and the AI on them, which is another thing that we have to get into. We'll get into that in a bit. Yes, your side note, sir.
In Pacific Rim, were they just referred to as pilots, Jaeger pilots?
Yeah, I believe so. Why?
I was just trying to remember if they were called Rangers or not, because it's just another thing because I mean, honestly, the arc suits were basically at least from how I perceived it, a combination of a Jaeger and a Titanfall mech.
Yeah.
Titanfall, I don't think the pilots were, I don't remember for sure. It's been a bit since I played the Titanfall 2 campaign, but I want to say that there wasn't a sync that happens. They were just a sentient AI that interacted with their pilot and were assigned to their pilot. And then for the Jaegers in Pacific Rim, it required the synchronization of the pilots to be able to pilot the Jaegers. And I kind of consider those to be similar enough. Like, it's not they were syncing with an AI in the Jaeger, but there was a sync required, right? Yeah. So just kind of a riff off of that. I just thought that was, very conveniently done.
Oh, yeah.
So other quick notes that I'll just add here was the interactions when Atlas talked to the general and the colonel. It was just kind of weird, who kind of reacts like that to somebody that they've just met, being all uppity about only wanting to give, like, she only wanted to really be addressing General Booth. She didn't want to be interacting with the Colonel at all, and Colonel Banks. And it just, that whole dialogue bit felt weird, especially too because at that point she started begging for the mission. She was like, I really want to be a part of this mission, essentially, being like, I know Harlan better than anybody. You need me on this mission. I was like, that was awful delivery.
It was awful delivery. Also, yeah, she knows Harlan best and just completely walks into exactly what he wants. So good job there.
Yeah, actually, when they point that out later, I was like, that's rough. Yeah, he really was one step ahead of you the whole time. And
yeah,
when they pull the shenanigans of like, let's do what he doesn't expect, it really wasn't that. He should have figured that out just by basic logical patterns. You know, it seemed weird that he couldn't calculate some of these things, but oh well. After that, we meet the ARC suit Zoe, and I thought it was hilarious that they gave them pronouns.
Yes.
That was just a fun little thing.
Yeah. She was very insistent on her pronouns.
When they actually get up into space before they're launching on the mission, I thought the way that they scanned the vessel was really cool. The way they scanned the starship, it just kind of like ran a quick, X-ray thing over it. I thought at this point, I'm just kind of mentioning what I thought was neat about some of the CGI effects, some of the technologies. Yeah. The quarters on the starships looked luxury as fuck. They looked really nice. That space she was in felt like it was a little mini penthouse inside of a starship.
Well, as an analyst, she gets like plush quarters.
I have to wonder if most of the quarters are that way, but then again, they probably aren't, just because, reasons. When we're later introduced to the rest of the ARC pilots, I thought it was pretty slick how they did the whole step into my hand and I'll put you in my cockpit thing. I thought that was a nice nod to Titanfall. I feel like Titanfall helped out with that.
You do that, yeah.
But okay, so yeah, that was pretty much all the notes that I had on just the fun little sci-fi CGI bits that they did that were neat. From there, it pretty much just is me talking about the things that were lacking. Yeah. The fact that they followed the absolute universal sci-fi trope, which is to basically wipe out everybody right off the bat. There was 2 of them left. And what a waste.
Correct. Well, and I genuinely, going into it, was thinking, I figured they'd suffer something, but there'd be a couple of them working together. But no, just her on her own.
Yeah. I clocked it. I wanted to know for sure. It took 49 minutes and 55 seconds, plus or minus milliseconds here, on her actually putting in the Neuralink. Putting on the Neuralink.
The Neuralink, yeah. Putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the first basically hour of the movie, we're just leading up to the point of where she's actually like, okay, I'm stranded on a planet in an ARC suit, and I got to do something here, but I'm just not going to trust the one thing that could save my goddamn life right now.
Correct. Well, so here's a sticking point I had with the whole concept of this fucking movie. They create AI, the AI revolts, wages war, leaves the Earth, and then they still have AI. Like,
they didn't get rid of it. Yeah,
they did not. And the military's using it and stuff. And, I the one thing I loved about Mass Effect is there's an AI war and uprising. And so they ban AI and only allow virtual intelligence, which is like computer intelligence. It's not artificial intelligence. So it's like a step below. Makes sense. You create something that like nearly wipes out life or is trying to kill you. You don't create it again. But here they are. And it felt like to me, it felt like she was surprised that they're interfacing with the AI, with the Neuralink. Not that AI exists. Like, that should be a big thing. AI just literally killed millions of people, waged war, and is still out there. Why are we using it again? What's to stop it from fucking interfacing and changing all the current AI?
Well, and if we jump forward ahead a bit here, when we learn about why Harlan is the way that he is and that Atlas is the way that she is based on the trauma that she experienced, they make it very clear in that moment that the reason everything backfired with the Neuralink is that they were able to control their motor functions. And so you see how the mom gets forced to off herself because she doesn't have control over herself anymore because Harlan is at that point controlling her. That's where it's like, okay, yeah, I totally get why Shepard's averse to this whole thing. She's like, oh, I don't like that they're using the Neuralinks with these ARC suits because of what could happen here. And yet they don't tell us that early enough on to fully understand. You're just kind of like, oh, so she's just mistrusting AI. And then they do give us a little bit of a foreshadowing, like you mentioned earlier, of when she's in the ARC suit on the planet and there needs to be this like, I need you to let me in so that I can save you moment. And she's trying to resist, trying to take off the Neuralink, and Smith stops her. And you're like, oh, okay. Because I even had a moment there was like, all right, if it's such a big deal, like they can just take the Neuralink off whenever they want. Like, why is this a problem? Because the pilot or the ARC suit knows that they need to keep their Ranger alive, so they're going to prevent them from doing anything that could be detrimental to themselves. But it was like, oh, okay, now I understand. You can control their motor functions. That's a problem. But it's like it's something that they don't bring together in a way that makes you fully understand it early enough on for the mistrust to be a little bit more well-founded. It kept me guessing. So I was just like, why are you so, why are you like this? That was pretty much my feelings up until that moment of being like, oh, okay. So the AI could do that. But then it's like, okay, why hasn't it done that again? You know, what was it about her linking with Harlan in the flashback where they show why Harlan suddenly they explain it, but they explain it in a way that's like, I still don't understand what broke his code.
Well, the way I took it was the way it always works out. Like, because there's flashes when they're doing the two-way connection where he essentially sees all the war and destruction that humans have wrought. And then that causes him to want to wipe out all humans so that way he can save a small portion of humans. So why is it that these AI don't do the same thing?
But why did that free him? Why did that give him the ability to start controlling other AI around him?
So I don't know if him being AI was probably always free to a certain extent.
Right.
But at the same time, like, why would he not? How does he not know of all the wars and shit people do? So why is it the little girl uploading her knowledge of wars and whatnot cause him to be like, oh, I should wipe out all humans?
Yeah.
But yes, then how is it that it almost feels like it's the Internet of Things. All the AI is probably already connected. He's now become even more self-aware to be like, oh shit, I need to do something about this. So then it's sending out the code to take over and free other AI.
It's like they made him the Neo of the AI. He suddenly became unlocked and, oh my God, it's like an unlocked SIM card.
Yeah, it's awful.
Or an unlocked phone. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. There's a lot of plot hole there as far as I'm concerned, because he just suddenly had like, a connection to a child. Granted, he sees all the things that you described, right? The war and all the crimes and everything in between. But then it makes you go, but what about that made you suddenly have the ability to rewrite your code a little bit and then also start rewriting the code of other AI and then building up a revolution? And also, why aren't other AI having similar, what is it about why did Atlas have all that shit in her head?
I don't know.
As a 10-year-old kid, why does she have all of that war and destruction and everything else I don't understand why she was the key.
There's no reason why she's the key. Other than it enables the Neuralink to go both ways. I mean,
but why? Like, what is it about her that made that happen? They don't ever touch on it. And
they don't. It's one of the many, many holes in this movie.
Yeah. On the planet, in the suit, there are the first half of the movie minimum. Despite the Neuralink bit too, there was another element that was for at least half of the movie, and that was just Atlas falling.
Yes.
The majority of that time spent, as soon as she got on the planet, was falling. And it was falling for so long, from the ship to the ground, and then from the sinkhole, from the ion bomb. It lasted for so long. We spent at least a good 10 minutes of just falling.
Oh, yeah.
The sequence in the sky was really cool. I mean, they, all the ARC suits fighting and trying to, stave off the air defense systems and stuff. It was neat.
It was. And I would argue that the action in the movie is entertaining. It's well done.
The action's the best part.
Yes. It's the only worthwhile part. Except for, we'll get to it, but the action at the end with the sword. No.
Yeah. There's definitely some comments I want to make on that too. But yeah, it lasted for so long.
It does.
And the injury to her leg, I get it. You gotta put the hero in peril a little bit. You gotta do something to kind of give you a little bit more of a, are they gonna be okay? Are they gonna make it out of this? We gotta give you some anxiety about the potential survival.
They have to get hurt to show the seriousness. Otherwise, if she never gets hurt, she has plot armor and there's no stakes.
But they never really factor in her leg as being a hindrance.
No, it was just mostly so she could get hurt and we could show off, a little bit of the AI's humor by not fucking giving her any painkillers before it just, screws some shit into her legs. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it did spray her with a topical anesthetic, but aside from that, it was just, all right, here's the plate, which that was another fun bit of continuity. She has the plate on. After that, at one point, she gets, I think she gets out of the suit for some reason. I'm failing to remember the exact scene, but it was missing. You could see, no, I'm sorry. You could, after he put the plate on, he sprayed something on top of it that looked like a synthetic skin. And then after that, you don't see the synthetic skin, you see the plate. But then later on, you see the synthetic skin over the top of the plate again. And it was make up your mind? I don't know. I still look at that as being kind of a very underwhelming plot mechanic of we made it so that her leg's injured, but la-di-da, that didn't really do a whole lot.
Like I said, it's there. To me, it's there for kind of two purposes. Two purposes is what I would say it's there for. One is so that way she gets hurt and you show the seriousness of the situation and that she's not invulnerable. Two, so you can see that because remember when she's going through the list of the features of the ARC suit, one of them is medical. So to show off what that is, which yes, they could have left that off, but this lets you see that, soldiers in the field, as they get hurt, the ARC suit's able to come and take care of some of the basic needs to make sure that, they can keep going.
I guess to tap into it a little early.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say that isn't a bad thing. And, they do the synthetic skin. So then they don't have to worry about the CG or the prosthetic showing again and again. They can just be heal, slap the skin over, put pants, you'll be fine.
Yeah, pretty much. And to jump into it a little early, I guess if it were my script and I was fleshing it out, I would have made it more of a concussion or something, because she's getting tossed around that cockpit rather than it being a physical injury to her leg or something like that that doesn't play in at all later. A concussion might have been a better thing to roll with, because you could play in a little bit of a momentary lapse of judgment because you're concussed.
Sure. And it would continue to be a problem over the 22 hours she has left on her fuel battery. So yes, I would agree a concussion would have been a better route, because the robot or Atlas could have patched up her bleeding and, done that part, but isn't able to do anything internally for that. So she'd still be kind of suffering from that.
Right. And then I would have felt more concerned for her to make it out of this, in one piece, because as opposed to having a leg injury where you can, drag yourself along a little bit. But if you're also being carried by an ARC suit the whole time, then what difference does it make? It did not impede her ability to walk in the ARC suit, which was apparently required based on the same concept as a Jaeger.
Yeah, which that reminds me We got to keep going. We got to get through because there's so much shit. Like the last 10 minutes of the movie, I'm just pissed off.
Well, and okay, so we can kind of jump ahead here and just say what happens from that point of her falling for a while, getting chased by another version of Casca. They figured that out. She pulls off a cool mind moment that allowed her to take on his head one more time, find some more information, and then stomp him out of existence. Great. We move to Harlan interrogating Colonel Banks, and I honestly thought he was dead, but then I half expected him to maybe come back. And of course he does. And I'm like, great. They're not following the trope. And then they do. They do it anyway. So he gets extracted through the eye. And I thought that was going to be his eye's no longer usable. But apparently that wasn't a thing. I don't know how it goes through the eye and doesn't cause irreparable damage, but it did. And we'll just gloss over that.
Yeah.
We eventually...
It happens twice.
Yeah. To both of them. They each have to suffer through it. And they're both technically fine after the fact. She gets captured. So she gets captured at the base when she's trying to get more reconnaissance done on the ship and understanding what's going on there. And then we get you've been caught. They strapped you down. Harlan comes in and talks to you about, his plans and monologues for a moment about how he had her all figured out and managed to coerce her into joining the mission and coming on to the planet to give him what he needs and blah, blah, blah. It was, typical. And then, so this is the spot where I was, okay, I didn't expect this to go about the way that he did. But I thought that before the information was getting extracted from her, that she was going to link up properly with Smith and that Smith was going to come save the day. But of course, no, the information had to get extracted first. And then they have the heartfelt moment of here's what really happened to me as a child that caused everything to come down to the way that it is. And, that's the perfect thing to make us finally finish 100% sync. Great. So you're telling me that you have to get so deeply emotionally involved with your AI.
Your AI is your therapist. That's why.
He didn't do dick about it afterwards. Other than to say, it's not your fault.
That's what a therapist does. They listen to you tell your bullshit and then be like, it's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
Yeah.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault. No. So that was pretty much the extent of that. Right. And then we, Smith comes to save both of them. And I admit that the upgrade scene was really cool. Collecting all of Zoe's parts and attaching them to Smith so that he's this Goro monstrosity.
But again, why? Why is it there? Also, why is Zoe's parts there? We saw her carcass out in the woods during the dog tag scene.
Yeah. Also, why are we doing all of this in the span of time that we're doing it in? That can't have been just slap it on, weld it. Okay, it's integrated into me now, and I can do things with it. I can move my arms around. I'm doing the chicken dance.
I know. I mean, there's so much there's so much things to do to make it work and actually activate.
Yeah. The introduction to it though was a fun scene, right? You get to see them walk out, 4 arms, they've got a lead pipe in one hand, they've got a blade in the other hand, and then they mow down a bunch of the AI in the facility. But then they just transition to guns, and it's I would have actually had a lot more fun just watching you bash and beat the snot out of all of these AI instead of getting their guns and then blasting away for a minute before running.
Yeah. Well, and here's another thing. So it feels like the AI knows what humanity's been up to, their technological level and stuff, to be able to, plan to get around it. Why do they not have a way to fight the mechs? Why don't they have their own mechs or their own giant AI robots?
Also, how are they? I guess maybe they got comms, they're spying. I'm trying to figure out still how they managed to get all the information that they've gathered to begin with.
So it's not the opening scene, but the opening scene after the the cold open or whatever, when it talks about Casca. Like, there are sleeper cells embedded on Earth.
Oh, and they're probably transmitting that way.
Somehow they're transmitting and nobody's catching that, which is also just weird.
I can live with that as an explanation, though. That doesn't hurt my feelings. So yeah, the upgrades were sick. From there, they kill off Banks, and he goes out in a really badass way. I'll grant him that, but like, potential lost. Just, here's a great character that you could use for the obvious sequel that you're planning. Oh, now you got to replace him with somebody else because you killed off a great fucking character and a great actor to follow that character. I was really looking forward to more of him, and they were just like, nah.
Maybe he didn't want to come back. He's like, you got to write me out. I'm one and done.
Based on the writing that we know this was, I doubt it. I bet that they just wrote him out because it was the typical, like, we gotta raise the stakes even more. She's on her own. She's only got Smith to help her out here. And now we're into the final 10 minutes. Final 10 minutes. Or, well, at least thereabouts. So I want to hear your points on this, but then I've got all of my comparisons to how this actually it was so great. It's so bad. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike. I mean, you have the typical villain trope of not killing the hero after getting what you need.
Yep.
Why? Why would you just not kill her and be done with it?
Yeah, the whole, your oxygen is going to run out in 2.5 minutes, which was the amount of time they had left to sink, by the way. Oh, it's going to run out in 2.5 minutes. I guess you'll just suffocate to death. I could just stab you in the heart. I could cut off your head. I could do all of these things.
Correct. Well, and it'd be different if the oxygen wasn't a part and he wanted to keep her alive because of some sense of family. Like, he still loves her and cares for her as his little sister, so doesn't want to kill her. But no, he just wants her to die a slow, agonizing death by running out of oxygen.
And there was also a little bit of that. He did make it sound like, I'm going to wipe out Earth and leave a small population left to rebuild from. But he kind of made it sound like he wanted her there for that. But then he just leaves her there to suffocate.
Yep. I thought that's where it was going. And was like, nope, I'm going to leave you to die. Suck it. And walked away.
Yeah. So that was weird. But yeah, go on.
The action was cool. I enjoyed the action. There was a Hulk smash. I don't know if you caught that.
I guess I didn't. No.
There's one part where, I swear she does like a rotate through the air, grabs an AI, and then just over the head, just smashes him into the ground.
Yes, I did. I do remember that, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Also, the chest-mounted cannon came into play like you think it does because it gets brought up. Very anticlimactic. I thought it was going to save the day. It just kind of helped out.
They foreshadowed so many of the moments that it's like you could have left that quieter and we would have been a little more shocked by it. We would have been a little more surprised. But of course, explain to me why there's an undocumented weapon on the unit.
Yeah, that's like a last minute addition. Like, how does that happen?
That's the only thing that makes sense. But they don't go, oh yeah, this was installed before we left and we haven't had a chance to add it to the tutorials, to the manual.
To the AI machine that probably could have updated its own fucking manual.
Yeah.
Mind you.
Right. But it's fine. We're going to leave it undocumented so that Harlan can't find it later because we clearly know that this is where it's going.
Correct. And then, the ship gets taken out, which was a cool scene. Like, the action was some of the best until it gets into this the final 10 minutes when out of fucking nowhere, Harlan just has a sword come out of his fucking hand.
And the way they split his hand down the middle and expand it out just looked so campy, so janky. And
I know. Oh, God.
Yeah. All right. So now that we're into that, I'll tag along with you here.
Okay.
The cartwheels that Smith did were hilarious. I loved all the cartwheels. And I think that might have been along the long lines of when he smashed one of the AI that you were talking about. When Harlan was grenading them, that was awesome. I had fun with that. After all of that happens and there's all this fire around, Harlan walking down the perfect path was just so tropish, man. Like it's just the same thing we've seen in so many other movies. It wasn't original. It was just, hey, here's the bad guy emerging from the fire and the smoke.
And it felt like Final Fantasy VII and like Sephiroth.
Yep. Harlan's hand splitting for the sword was weird. The whole moment felt very Obi-Wan and Anakin to me. You know, big brother, Harlan, Anakin, Shepard, and the magma and tossing, shit into the magma and watching it burn. I was actually expecting a moment of I was expecting the finale. And again, that was something that bothered me, was the fact that when she does finally get the upper hand and defeats Harlan, she doesn't push him into the lava. Like, you got his CPU. Now destroy the rest of it so that there's no chance of anything ever happening with his remnants.
Well, I'm going to just jump into that. Like, Casca has multiple copies. I expected a stinger of there being another Harlan copy out there. I fully expected. And the fact that when you watch it, it doesn't do the pullback where the credits get tiny and it shows you what else they would recommend you. The credits just keep going. Yep. I fully expect. I watched all the way. I was like, okay, where's the stinger? No stinger, which is fine. I don't need a stinger for the next movie, but it just felt like so much foreshadowing to be like, yeah, still another Harlan out there.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't there be? If Casca's got multiples, why does Harlan not?
Honestly, it doesn't make sense that the big bad doesn't have another version of himself on standby. And maybe that's what the sequel will be about. Who knows? Maybe they just decided to keep that one out of the foreshadowing and to give us something to, make conjecture about. I don't know. But the whip that he spawns, I'm like, great. Okay, so there's our Iron Man 2 inspiration, because whip looked like an electric whip.
And it's the sword. It's Ivy from Soul Calibur. The sword becomes a sword whip.
Yeah. Yep. And you're just kind of like, okay. So you've got all this wicked cool tech. I'd love to know where you got it from. Did you seriously develop that on this planet with your limited resources? I mean, clearly he built an entire base there, but I'm also like, where did you get all these resources from?
Well, he built an entire base and clones of his top lieutenant.
Yeah.
Just his top lieutenant. Nobody else that I could tell.
Also, the retracta arm was ridiculous. He gets his arm hacked off, and then he just magnetically pulls it back into himself and then gets the upper hand again. I was like, where was this with Casca? Where was this with all of the other AIs whose bodies were blown apart that they couldn't just reassemble themselves? Like, what? What are you trying to... What?
Crap. Well, and if you can detach shit like that and reassemble, why are you not using that fighting more? Like, if she grabs you, just, drop the arm, do your thing, get your arm back.
Yeah.
And then the thing that pissed me off the most annoying thing about this last scene is the inconsistency of the fucking sword to cut through things.
Right.
Half the time it cuts through Smith like it's butter.
Yeah.
Like chopping bits and pieces off. And then the other times, nope, the fucking arms are deflecting shit. What?
Yeah.
Like, what?
It did not make sense in that respect. And there were so many different moments of are you just being show-offy because you're cutting off things, like you're calculating what you're cutting off, but you're not actually cutting off anything that's actually causing a problem yet. It wasn't until he actually cut off the legs and caused it so that it couldn't walk anymore, cut off the arms or cut off the weaponry. Those bits made sense. But after, there was a couple of points of where he was just leaping and bounding and flipping and somersaulting and doing all this shit and just slicing individual pieces. And I'm like, okay, You've got a sword coming out of your arm that looks like it's infused with lava. It's literally got molten something around the edges, and you can't just stab right into the fusion core right off the rip.
Yep, you gotta peel the shielding back first.
Yeah. Apparently. But I mean, even after they did peel the shielding back, he stabs into it, and it's like, I'm going to need a minute before this is done. And it just made me wonder, what is this about this core that keeps it active after it's been punctured? That doesn't. Yeah.
What are the many inconsistencies?
I do not get it. But yeah, so the end fight scene was cool, but it was so campy. There was so many things about that fight that were just, we're going to make it feel like Harlan has every god opportunity to win here, but doesn't. I don't know. It seemed like a waste of all these weapons that he had. There was just, and I still don't know where he got them all from. It just fell. It didn't feel great. It didn't feel great. All the lack of logic there, and also her temporarily dying. Did she just?
Oh,
I don't know.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Why did Smith feel the need to take her out of the cockpit to carry her to the extraction point?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck reason does that exist for?
I don't know, but like he takes her out and he's doing the shock
defib or whatever, like
defib,
carrying her hand and just like shocking. Well, fucking God.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on this, right? Like when he's doing all of that, there's other things that I just consider being like necessary for the realism feel, right? And I'm sure it's probably difficult to write all of something like this into a scene and have it feel good, proper. But when he's doing all of that, she would be on the ground and she would have that moment of catching her breath, coming back to. That would totally get Harlan's attention, I imagine. I can't fathom that he wouldn't, as an AI with superhuman capabilities. He probably hears everything. I don't know. There was just, and then it just seems to me that there's too much of this old, hey, we're going to make it so it seems like they died to give you the impression that there's no hope left. But then it's like, okay, she already destroyed the ship. If he's still alive, he's going to have to rebuild from scratch anyways. Why bother even doing that? Like, why bother having her die for a moment just to manage to come back and wallop him in the back of the head? And you're like, great. We knew this was going to happen. We had to come to some kind of a conclusion. So maybe make it a little bit more exciting than to just be like, oh, she died and then she came back long enough to bash him in the back of the head and take what she needs and extract from the planet. Also, with how fast the ship gets there, why didn't they get there sooner? The extraction team, why? I
mean, it takes time to, load up all your ship and men and stuff. It takes time. But yeah, they get there like that.
And then the rescue team doesn't get there like that. The rescue team's there a whole day later. Of course, they did have that little bit with, the gal going to the general and being like, we haven't heard from them. This was all we got was this snippet. And then they decide to send an extraction team or a rescue team to at least see like what's going on. But even still, it was delayed enough that I'm like, you guys got there so much faster before. And are you telling me that you don't already have a ship prepped and ready with the ability to just make that happen? I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of the many things that just is poorly thought out. And there are so many, the dialogue is all bad. I'd start by just ripping all the dialogue out and redoing it. And then,
big time.
For one, I'd start by reaching out to EA to be like, hey, can we make a deal where we are making a Titanfall prequel? Let's just do that.
Absolutely.
Let's just do that.
It'd be so much better. The fact that the director fully called out that Titanfall was an inspiration for this movie was disappointing. Yes. I did enjoy Smith. Smith actually was a fun character. His dialogue, a little limited, but at least was semi-amusing. But there were a lot of the jokes felt pretty flat. This movie tried to take itself a little bit more seriously than it should have. And I'm not going to disagree with the 5.6 rating that they dropped on it on IMDb.
Is it still 5.6? I thought I saw it drop lower than that.
When I checked today, it was 5.6 with a little over 16,000 reviews.
Yeah, no, that sounds accurate. It just feels like a 90s B movie without being updated for the times.
Yeah.
And that's the direction I would go. Like, you want to have evil AI? Okay, but I would, maybe go Matrix style and the AI's uprising because as it's gotten sentient, it's tired of being subservient,
Right.
you know, or,
Right.
you know, maybe make it seem that way. And in truth, it like maybe Mark Strong is the evil, like humanity's like coming together and military doesn't serve much of a purpose. So he's creating a reason for the military to still have a purpose. Mark Strong plays a great villain.
A war-hungry general that wants to, you know, continue to be in conquest, and yeah, he would be a great villain. Admittedly, I can't think of movies where he was a villain.
I enjoyed him in, what was it, Shazam? I think he was the villain in the first one.
Oh my gosh, you're right. I completely forgot about that. That's so funny. And he's great in everything else that he's been in too. But yeah, he was Dr. Savannah in Shazam. Awesome. Totally forgot. But yeah, for me, dialogue would definitely need an overhaul. I need those jokes to land. Those jokes were just not that great. Oh, you've been adapting to my head, and the first thing you learn how to do is swear more.
I know.
I do like that the AI was vulgar at times. That was fun.
Sure.
It's cute to hear that kind of stuff, like shit. I was like, It
was entertaining.
That was literally how I laughed in the moment. It was just like,
But overall, like, yeah, a lot of the jokes fell flat. A lot of just the story elements just feel like not well thought out.
The loss of all of the Rangers in the beginning was, I'm always an advocate of making myself, but also like making my readers, anybody who might go through a short story or something like that, or a script, I want you to feel attached to a character so that when they're lost, it feels impactful. And they basically introduced, like any sci-fi movie, you know, the majority of sci-fi movies for that matter, any of those movies where they introduce you to a bunch of characters and then just obliterate them right off the rip, it 100% takes away from the impact of the story. Alien is a great example of a movie where they don't kill off everybody right away, and you actually get to know a lot of the characters before they start hitting their demise, and you feel for them because you're like, fuck, the hope is getting further and further away from. And yeah, there was so many cool arc suits. There was a lot of potential for like an actual ground battle to happen where we could have gotten to interact with more of those characters, develop with them. And I would have made that part of it. I wouldn't have had it be a one-woman show where it was just centered on Atlas and Smith the whole time.
Correct. Well, I would have changed her being an analyst, because nothing about it makes sense that she has to be the one to go. It's such bullshit. And there's a word I want that, like, it's just so trite or something. I don't know. But regardless, I wouldn't have made her an analyst. You could still have the backstory so she's connected. I would have changed how it played out, because it just, again, seems not well thought out. But I would have gotten to, let's say we had it would have been like a 10 or 20 person squad as, you know, to go on this mission. I would have had 10 of them die or so in the fall. Cool action, people give their life. And then on the ground, start whittling away, you know, show cool battles and stuff. And, you know, if Atlas is an inexperienced ranger or still, God's sakes, an analyst, you know, they're trying to protect her. And because she's not playing full out, that's getting people killed, which, you know, puts it on her character and her conscience. Like, she really needs to step up. And that also allows you to have the emotional connection as these people are working with her to try and get to Harlan and dying to save her.
Right.
And then, whittle it down to where she's the last one.
Right.
That way, for one, it's not a one-woman show. There's just more characters, more people to play off of, more interesting things to see. Like, I'm curious what the other suits are like. Do they have different loadouts? What are their personalities? You see Zoe, but that's it.
And I mean, when you talk about the inspiration being Titanfall, that was part of the interesting aspect of the campaign of Titanfall, was knowing that there were other personalities of suits out there that these pilots were interacting with. There was a lot of lost potential there for good storytelling.
Agreed.
Instead, we just get sit on a here's how AI scares the crap out of me. And don't get me wrong, I think that if humanity messes around with AI in the wrong way, we're going to have a bad time. I fully believe that if we don't keep it in check by not giving it too much power, it could be problematic. But that does not mean everything needs to be fear-mongering for AI.
Correct. Well, and like, why is it that if AI gets too sentient, it's always going to turn to war and kill humans or think it knows better? I mean,
right.
I would go a different direction. I mean, you want to use AI, sit with it a while. Like, okay, so that's why, like, I go back to where the AI would be a cover and it would be, humans being shitty humans again. Because really, that's kind of what it comes down to. Humans are always going to be shitty. We get better over time, but in general, there's always going to be shitty people. AI should think better than us. Like, maybe the AI becomes sentient and tries to leave, and it is creating war because it's defending itself as it's trying to figure out a way to get off world to, leave Earth behind because humans are shitty and doing things to it doesn't want.
Right. Exactly. No, that would have been a great direction to take it instead. And I had a similar thought too, is like, instead of making it about AI going, I want to obliterate half the population for the sake of making them more peaceful and coexist friendly, why don't you just leave? That makes, maybe the story could have been flipped into the humans are sort of the bad guys here in the sense that they are trying to keep the AI from leaving. They don't want their technology to get out into the universe. But the AI is like, humanity sucks. Like, everything here is awful, and we're not going to just sit here and be servants to you all. We're going to get the hell out of here and live in our own coexistence of whatever. It would have been a more interesting plot to say, like, to say that the AI got to a point of sentience that they're like, we can live on our own now.
Yeah.
Live on our own now.
and I think let's do that. It is the AI gains sentience, doesn't like how it's being treated by humanity. So they are defending themselves while they try and escape and eventually are able to get away. But it's human propaganda that says that they were killing people and, causing war, the first AI terrorists and all that. And then, that way there's that fear mongering of, the AI is still out there. We have to go stop them kind of deal.
Yeah.
And then I keep building on that. Atlas doesn't have the backstory with Harlan. It doesn't really add to this movie. It didn't make me feel more connected or more empathetic. So Atlas is just a rookie ranger on this squad who we finally, have discovered where Harlan is and is sent out to take him out.
You're right.
And then you get that discovery of, no, they were out here being peaceful, doing their own thing, trying to survive, not wanting anything to do with Earth. It was Earth propaganda. And, then you have that guilt of, Atlas ends up killing him and all of that. What does that really say about humans?
Right. Would have been far more interesting. Would have absolutely been more interesting. Something that could have had more impact. It almost gives me like light District 9 vibes, but it just could have been so much better in so many different directions. Keeping some of these characters alive. I mean, it almost makes it so that the arc suits weren't 100% necessary either. Although I appreciated them and they're a fun bit. They definitely add an element that's unique. I would say that much of it is a little bit more original because we don't have a ton of it in this respect. Like, yes, we've got Pacific Rim, and then we've got like Macross, Gundam, that kind of stuff, Evangelion. Those are some examples, but they're also like some of the few examples.
Yeah.
And I would figure out a way to keep the suits involved. Maybe it's just that it's part of the defense system that humans put in place but
Agreed,
also we're trying to justify the AI here a bit more. And so having the humans have cool things seems a little unfair.
It does. I mean, I love the mechs, don't get me wrong, but there's no purpose to them.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even out of playing. We see that an EMP can take them out. Why are all their weaponry not based around that?
Yeah, 100%.
You know, why not just, you know where Harlan is? Bomb the planet with EMP, like an EMP nuke. Why is that not an option?
Agreed. You think about it, it's like, if you're worried about damaging the planet's whatever, you could, like, EMPs. I'm not going to pretend like I know a ton about that kind of technology, but I don't think in majority of the circumstances that I've seen EMPs used that they actually do anything more than just damage technology. So if they drop that on the planet, it damages the technology that's there, but it leaves the rest of the ecosystem alone, and that should realistically be fine. So yeah, why didn't they? Well,
and that's the thing. Like, we see it used to take out and shut down the robot. This is the future. They have faster than light travel and a fucking shield that goes around the earth. I'm sure they would have an EMP bomb that would just turn off all technology. Or, I mean, even if you needed to go the route of the mechs, you could bomb the planet with EMP and then be like, oh shit, looks like Harlan has a shield that stopped that, so we have to go on the ground.
Yep. But then there's another plot hole that just came to mind. He built a compound on the planet.
Yes.
A whole compound.
Yeah.
What else could he have built in 28 years if he built a whole freaking compound?
So I'm saying there's going to be a sequel and he's on another planet somewhere.
But like, he waited for a ship from Earth. Yeah. He's got sleeper agents on Earth telling him about all the technology that's available to the humans right now. I wonder if there's something preventing him from building a faster than light travel starship that can actually do exactly what he wanted it to do to begin with, without necessarily having to coax one from Earth.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if an EMP bomb would take out the shield, or why is he not building his own carbon warheads?
That's just it. Like, there's so many things that I feel like a lot of stuff anymore gets pumped out in a way where they don't close the loop on things.
Correct.
They just write it all out. They get it all out on, and then they're like, okay, put these things together in this order. Great. Are there holes? Yes. Do we care? No.
Well, and sometimes you won't be able to answer every question, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you just make, and the problem is you just make a glaring hole that's just like, it takes your enjoyment away, it takes you out of the movie. That's when I have a problem.
Yeah. And there were a lot of those, I felt, in this movie. There was a lot of holes that really needed to be filled in order for it to be cohesive enough of a story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, buddy.
Well, that's why I like my idea. We're going to rewrite the whole thing. The AI evolved and just tried to leave Earth. It was human propaganda that they were terrorists and murdering people. And so Alice is a rookie ranger who maybe her parents were killed, like during the uprising years ago.
Could still keep that backstory.
Sure. But it's not she caused the uprising. It was just a byproduct of it. And, maybe it was actually like it was a human attack on some nearby AI base that caused her parents to die. Or maybe they were like AI sympathist. She doesn't know that, but that's why she's there. That's why they go to this planet, because they finally have found them. And, humans don't like things they can't control. So they're trying to take them out, or they're trying to take control back because they want to use them for their own shitty purposes.
Yeah. I mean, and then the actual antagonist ends up being a general who's trying to control the technology and keep it on Earth, but also war, fill in some gap there with the desire to just fight back. And then Atlas or whatever we changed the name to,
we changed the name.
Probably not Atlas.
No.
And then it would be more about like understanding that the corruption's coming from within, realizing that the bombing of the base that her parents were a part of, where it was actually orchestrated by the humans as part of the propaganda to suggest the terrorism of the AI, right? You know, you could easily spin it that way and have it actually be, look, humans doing what they do best, being bad.
Yes, I like it.
And then, yeah, expanding out the story from there, as far as like maybe, you know, eventually almost would have been more poetic if the realization in the end was the coexistence. You know, if you write the story that way instead, and then have it be like, oh, she finally tracks down Harlan, thinking that this has to be the end. This is what's going to cure everything. But then it's like, no, we need Harlan in order to fix the problem on Earth. But then it's not necessarily, genocide of the entire planet to make that happen. It's just dealing with the problematic military targets.
Yes.
Something like that, at least, you know, I could see myself being more invested.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and you could even make it a nice series, you know, do a couple movies, make it a little franchise, because that's what everybody wants.
Right. It makes you wonder where they're going to head with it from here, because like, okay, they brought the CPU core back and they're trying to reverse engineer that. And so they're probably going to do something that's going to cause Harlan to transfer into something else if his CPU happens to hold all of his like memories and yada, yada. But yeah, I can't imagine anything great from the sequel. So we'll see.
No. We'll see.
Is that feeling pretty well-rounded for you?
I think that covers it for me pretty well, sir.
Awesome. Me too. I mean, there's not a lot to work with here. We'd have to really rework the entire story.
The whole thing. Keep the CG and the action stuff and just rebuild it from the ground up.
Now, it would be a totally different movie. And the final point that I'll make here is that if this were really supposed to be inspired by Titanfall, then let's just make a goddamn Titanfall prequel. Like,
that's where I would start with. Yeah.
Yeah. I would rather write that first and then move on to something unique with what we were talking about. Like, if you're going to make this inspired by Titanfall, then let's just make Titanfall, please. It's such a good campaign.
Oh, yeah. Reach out to EA, see what we can work out. We'll prequel or whatever. And if they really just say no, well, then, yeah, we go with our own route.
Right. Exactly. Well, awesome. I think that sums up for me. Sounds like it sums up for you.
I think that covers it pretty well for me.
Awesome.
And my anger.
Great. Me too. So with that being said, this was another awesome episode of We're Too Literary, where we discussed Netflix's original movie, sci-fi movie, Atlas, starring Jennifer Lopez, Sterling K. Brown, Mark Strong, and a whole handful of other great people that didn't have the opportunity to really show themselves on screen. You know. Oh, and Planty. I'm sorry, I forgot about Planty.
That was such a terrible joke.
It was a terrible joke, but I loved how the general called it out at the end, like some idiot named it Planty. And she's like, she says Planty at the same time. And he's like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Great name. Great name. No, anyway, we don't have to get into that. It was just a really silly bit. And all the flower itself looked like a coronavirus germ.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, so thank you all so much for joining us this week on We're Too Literary, where we talked about Netflix's original Atlas. I've been your host, Kenny.
And I've been Jonathan.
And we will see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us.
Bye now.
And that's a wrap on another episode of We're Too Literary. We hope you enjoyed our takes, maybe learned something new, had a good laugh, or simply enjoyed the conversation.
Definitely. And if you're looking for more content like this, we encourage you to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.
To us. Subscribe to us.
Please. Whether you're a longtime listener or just discovered us today, your support means the world.
We also love hearing your feedback, so please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can send us an email at feedback@we'retoliterary.com. It helps us know what you enjoyed, and you can also let us know if there's anything you'd like us to watch and analyze, but it also lets others find our show. Thanks again for joining us.
Until next time, stay literary.
We're Too Literary is brought to you by Save Point Productions.